When Nate moved into the unit across the hall, I didn't think much of it. People come and go in this building all the time. You hear a few thuds, the occasional vacuum war, and then after a few months, they're gone. Just another set of shoes by the door. But Nate was different. The first time I saw him, I was hauling a bag of laundry down the stairs. Earbuds in, hoodie up, doing my usual antisocial guy routine. I nearly slammed right into him coming around the corner. "Shit, sorry," I mumbled, pulling out one earbud. He smiled. "All good, man." He had that kind of easy smile that made you feel like you weren't a complete mess, even if you literally just dropped your boxers in the hallway. He crouched to help me, handing me a rogue sock. "I'm Nate," he said, standing again. "Tyler," I replied. "Unit 3B. 3A, he grinned. "Guess we're neighbors." It was a simple exchange. Nothing heavy. But later that night, while folding my clothes, I kept thinking about his smile, his voice, the way he'd looked at me, like he actually saw me. I didn't get that a lot. The next time I saw him, he was in the building's tiny gym. I'd been trying to stick to this half-assed workout schedule, mostly as an excuse to get off my screen and feel something in my legs besides cramps from bad posture. I walked in, and there he was, doing pull-ups in a faded band t-shirt, headphones on, eyes closed. He didn't see me at first. I sat on the bike, pretending not to watch him between sips of water. Eventually, he glanced my way and smiled. "Hey, Tyler." I blinked. "You remembered my name." "Yeah, man. Neighbors, right?" From then on, we'd say hey every time we passed in the hallway or crossed paths in the laundry room. It never went beyond small talk at first. Weather, rent prices, the weird neighbor with too many cats. But there was something about him that stuck, something that made my stomach tighten a little every time I heard his voice. He was always so open, like he didn't have the filters most people did. He'd say shit like, "Today sucked," or "I cried in my car after work," like it was just a normal update. And I found myself wanting to hear more, wanting to be close enough to be one of the people he told the real stuff to. One night, I ran into him outside around 11. I'd gone down to the mailbox in slippers, and there he was, leaning against the brick wall with a beer in hand, staring up at the moon. "Trouble sleeping?" I asked. He nodded, always. We talked for over an hour that night, about everything: work, family, exes. He told me he moved to the city after a breakup with someone he'd been with for 3 years. He didn't say it was a guy. Didn't say it wasn't. I didn't ask. But the way he looked at me, I was starting to wonder. I was already too far in. After that night on the steps, something shifted. We didn't just exchange hellos anymore. Nate started knocking on my door. Sometimes it was small stuff. "Hey, you got any coffee filters?" Or, "My Wi-Fi's down. Mind if I use yours for a sec?" But other times, it was just, "Hey, you want to hang out?" The first time he came in, I was halfway through cleaning my kitchen. He looked around at the cluttered counter, the drying rack stacked with mugs, and laughed. "Dude, this is lived in. I like it." He sat on the arm of my couch like he belonged there, legs wide, hair a little damp from a shower. I tried not to stare. Failed, probably. We ended up watching some random Netflix documentary about corrupt theme parks and eating popcorn straight out of the bag. At one point, he leaned back, stretching his arms over his head, and his shirt rode up just enough to show a sliver of skin. I looked away fast. But he caught me. He didn't say anything, just gave me this tiny, knowing smirk. After that night, he was over at least once or twice a week. Sometimes we'd talk until 2 a.m., sprawled out on the couch, half drunk and laughing too hard about nothing. Sometimes it was quiet. Just the two of us in the same room, doing our own thing. Me editing photos, him sketching in this worn-out notebook he always carried. He was studying graphic design. Said it was the only thing that ever felt like him. One night, he asked me something that made my pulse spike. "You ever think about leaving the city?" I looked up from my laptop. "All the time." "Where would you go?" I shrugged. "Somewhere quiet. A cabin, maybe. Trees. No neighbors. He smiled, twirling his pen. That actually sounds amazing. I didn't know what made me say it. Maybe the way he looked at me then, like he was already picturing it. You'd come too, right? He froze for a second. Then he said, yeah, I think I would. It was one of those moments you feel in your chest for hours afterward. I lay in bed that night, replaying the words, yeah, I think I would. Something was happening. Slowly, softly, but definitely. Then came the night that cracked it open. He texted me around 10. You up? I replied, yeah. You good? He didn't answer. 2 minutes later, there was a knock on my door. Nate stood there in joggers and a hoodie, no shoes, eyes tired. I just didn't want to be alone tonight, he said. You okay? I asked. He nodded, stepping inside without waiting for an invite. Just a rough day. Do you mind if I crash here? Just couch or floor, whatever. I stared at him. You can take the bed, he hesitated. Only if you're in it too. I froze for half a second. Not because I was shocked, but because I wasn't. Somewhere deep down, I think I'd been waiting for him to say something like that. Hoping, maybe. Still, the words hung in the air between us, heavy and loaded. You sure? I asked. He didn't flinch. Yeah, I'm just tired. Don't want to think tonight. So I nodded and stepped aside. We didn't talk much as we got ready. I brushed my teeth, changed into an old t-shirt and gym shorts. He stripped off his hoodie, revealing a tight white tank that clung to him in a way I tried hard not to think about. He didn't look at me, not really, just pulled back the covers and slid into the left side like he'd done it 100 times. I lay down beside him, keeping space between us, the silence loud in my ears. My heart thudded with every small shift of the mattress. You good? I asked after a few minutes. Yeah, he said softly. You're warm. It took everything in me not to roll over and look at him. You cold? No, he whispered. Just warm feels nice. I let out a slow breath. And then I felt it. The slightest shift. His foot brushing mine under the sheets. It was quick, almost accidental. But it lingered. I didn't pull away. Neither did he. We lay like that, quiet, motionless, the inches between us shrinking in tension, if not in distance. I couldn't tell how much time passed. A minute? 5? Then his voice, low and tentative. Tyler? Yeah? If I tell you something, will you promise not to make it weird? I turned toward him, finally. In the dark, I could barely see his face, just the outline of his features. Yeah, I said. Promise. He exhaled. Sometimes I think about this. Us? Like, what it would be like. My chest tightened. What do you mean? He was quiet for a beat. I don't know what it means. I'm not. He stopped, shook his head slightly. I just feel something when I'm around you. I swallowed hard. Yeah? He nodded, barely visible in the dark. And I think I've been trying not to. But tonight, I didn't want to be alone. And you're the only person I wanted to be around. My heart was going ballistic. I didn't say anything. I just reached across the space between us and let my fingers brush his. Light. Careful. Testing. He didn't pull away. Instead, his fingers curled around mine. Just like that. Quiet. Easy. Like we'd always done it. We stayed like that the rest of the night. No kisses. No bold moves. Just two guys in the same bed, holding hands like it was the most natural thing in the world. When I woke up, his hand was still in mine. The room was dim, the morning light barely starting to filter through the blinds. I wasn't sure how long I'd been awake. Maybe a few minutes, maybe an hour. but I hadn't moved. I didn't want to. His fingers were warm and relaxed, his grip still gentle, like he'd never let go. I turned my head slightly to look at him. He was facing me now, one arm tucked under his head, hair tousled, lips slightly parted. Still asleep. Peaceful. There was a faint line between his brows like he was dreaming something intense. I didn't want to ruin it, but I couldn't stop staring. Eventually, he stirred. His eyes opened slowly, unfocused at first. Then they locked on mine. For a moment, neither of us said anything. "Morning," I said softly. He gave me a sleepy smile. "Hey!" I expected awkwardness. Regret, maybe. But it didn't come. He stretched his legs beneath the covers and blinked a few times before his gaze dropped to our joined hands. He didn't let go. "Did I do something stupid?" he asked, voice raspy. "No," I said quickly, "not stupid." He looked back at me. "You sure?" I nodded. "Yeah, I liked it." That seemed to settle something in his expression. He sighed, some invisible tension leaving his shoulders. "Good," he said, "because I don't really know what I'm doing here. I just know I didn't want to be anywhere else last night." I couldn't help but smile. Same. He rolled onto his back, pulling his hand away just long enough to rub his eyes, then folded his arms behind his head. "So now what?" he asked. The question hung in the air. "I guess we figure it out," I said. "We don't have to know everything right now." He turned his head to look at me again, and there was something in his eyes. Relief, maybe. Or trust. "Okay," he said quietly. "Yeah. I'd like that." We spent most of the morning in bed, talking. About nothing and everything. He told me about growing up in a small town, about never really knowing how to define what he felt or who he wanted. I told him about coming out at 21 and how messy it had been with my family. We traded stories, bad dates, worst roommates, favorite movies, childhood dreams. It felt good. Easy. Real. When he finally got up, he shuffled into the kitchen in his socks, hair wild, eyes still half-lidded. I followed him, unable to stop smiling. "I'm making coffee," he mumbled. "You want?" "Obviously." He glanced over his shoulder, smirked. "You're already acting like a boyfriend." I paused. Then I said, "Maybe I am." He didn't say anything at first, just opened the cabinet, pulled down 2 mugs. Then, over his shoulder, "You might not be wrong." After that morning, things didn't go back to normal. But they didn't fall apart either. If anything, they got better. Nate didn't officially move in. Not really, but he started spending most nights at my place. His toothbrush showed up in my bathroom one day. Then his hoodie on the back of my chair, his sketch pad on my coffee table. Little things, like a quiet expansion of presence. It wasn't some big declaration. It just happened. We still didn't call it anything. No labels. No long talks about what this was. Just 2 guys learning how to be closer than before. Holding hands on the couch. Brushing shoulders in the kitchen. Passing beers and catching each other's eyes like we were still getting away with something. One night, he stayed late working on a class project in my living room while I edited photos in the corner. Around midnight, I looked up to find him asleep on the couch, laptop still open on his lap, mouth slightly parted. I just watched him for a moment, the way his face softened in sleep. He looked younger, vulnerable in a way I'd never seen before. I covered him with a blanket and sat beside him, just watching the rise and fall of his chest. I didn't even realize I'd fallen asleep too, head resting near his legs, until I woke up to him gently brushing my hair back from my forehead. "You always sleep on people's thighs," he whispered, grinning. "Only yours," I murmured, still groggy. He laughed softly. "Lucky me." I sat up, rubbed my eyes. How long was I out? A while. He looked at me, serious now. "I like this. Us. It feels like I can breathe around you." I didn't say anything. I just leaned in and kissed him. It wasn't our first kiss. That had happened a few nights earlier, after a dumb game of 20 questions and too much whiskey. But this one felt different. Slower, more certain. His hand found the side of my neck, fingers warm and gentle, like he already knew the shape of me. When we pulled back, neither of us said a word. We didn't need to. The next few weeks blurred in the best way. Dinners cooked together, groceries shared, late night walks through the neighborhood just because. Sometimes we'd lie in bed in complete silence, scrolling on our phones, legs tangled. Other times we'd stay up talking until dawn, asking each other questions that didn't have simple answers, like, "Do you think your parents would understand?" Or, "Did you ever imagine your life would look like this?" And once, very quietly, "Do you think we're falling in love?" He didn't answer that one. Not with words, anyway. He just kissed me, slow and deep, until I forgot what the question even was. The first time we went out together. Actually out, like as a couple, even if we still hadn't used the word. We didn't plan it. Nate had a craving for Thai food. I wanted to leave the apartment. We walked to this little place a few blocks away, the kind that had Christmas lights hanging year-round, and a single laminated menu per table. We sat in a booth by the window, the air thick with curry and fried garlic. I couldn't stop looking at him, the way he laughed at the server's bad joke, the way he leaned in when I talked like no one else in the room mattered. I reached across the table, not really thinking, and let my fingers brush his. He didn't pull away. In fact, he flipped his hand and laced our fingers together, right there in front of everyone. My stomach did this stupid little somersault, not because I was scared, but because I wasn't. For the first time, I wasn't hiding. Neither was he. After dinner, we walked home slowly, our hands brushing in and out of contact, like we both kept finding excuses to touch again. "You know," he said, glancing over, "I told my sister about you." I stopped. "Yeah?" He nodded. "Said I met someone, that I think he's kind of changing my life." I laughed nervously. "What did she say?" "She said, about damn time. Apparently I've been miserable for years and didn't notice." That night, back in my apartment, we didn't rush anything. We took our time undressing each other. Not for sex, but just to be close. To see each other. It felt like we were peeling away more than just clothes. Something deeper. Protective layers we didn't need anymore. When he crawled into bed beside me, he pressed his forehead to mine and whispered, "I think I was waiting for you before I even knew it." I didn't sleep much that night. Not because I was anxious or unsure, but because I couldn't stop tracing the outline of his back with my fingertips, memorizing the shape of what it felt like to belong. I started noticing little things, like how he always took the mug with the tiny chip near the handle, how he rubbed the back of his neck when he was thinking, how he mumbled song lyrics under his breath without realizing it. And I realized I didn't just want him around because he made me feel less alone. I wanted him around because he made me feel more like myself. We weren't perfect. There were weird silences sometimes, or misunderstandings, or those occasional moments where I'd catch him staring at the wall like he was trying to remember how he got here. But we figured it out. One night while brushing our teeth, he paused and said, toothpaste still in his mouth, "You know we're together, right?" I stared at him in the mirror, then smirked. "You mean this wasn't just an elaborate sleepover?" He shoved my shoulder, laughing. "Shut up." "Yeah," I said, quieter now. "We're together." It was the first time we said it out loud, and hearing it, real, defined, felt like slipping into a coat I didn't know had always been waiting for me. It was a rainy Sunday when Nate surprised me. We were curled up on the couch, me half under a blanket, him with his legs draped over mine, scrolling through movie trailers like it was the most critical decision of the week. He paused the remote and looked at me. "Hey," he said. "I want you to meet my mom." I blinked. "What?" "She's coming to town next weekend, and I want her to meet you." I sat up slightly, searching his face. He wasn't joking. "You sure?" I asked, cautious. "I mean, that's big." "I know," he said, "but I'm not scared of her knowing anymore. And I don't want to pretend you're just my neighbor or some guy I'm hanging out with." I let that sink in. It was wild how far we'd come in just a few months. From awkward gym small talk to late night soul bearing, from shared beers to sharing a bed. And now, family. You want me to meet her as your boyfriend? I asked. He grinned. Well, yeah, unless you've got a better title. No, I said, smiling. That one's good. The weekend came fast. I was more nervous than I wanted to admit, checking the mirror way too many times before we left the apartment. Nate noticed. He always noticed. Relax, he said, squeezing my shoulder. She's going to love you. He was right. His mom was warm and curious, with a sharp wit and a voice that reminded me of old records. We had lunch at a cafe by the river, and she asked me thoughtful questions about my photography, my family, how Nate and I met. At one point, she smiled and said, "He talks about you all the time, you know." Nate blushed, sipping his iced tea to hide it. When we walked home, hand in hand, he looked over at me and said, "That wasn't so bad, was it?" "No," I said. "It was kind of perfect." And in that moment, I knew this wasn't a phase. This wasn't temporary. What we had, whatever name we gave it, was the real thing. A few weeks later, we were back at the gym, the same dingy 24-hour spot where it had all started. I was on the bike, watching him do pull-ups, his tank top clinging to his back with sweat, his jaw set with focus. It hit me out of nowhere, this weird, overwhelming sense of gratitude that he'd shown up in my hallway that day, that I dropped my laundry like an idiot, that somehow two lost people had found something that actually made sense. When he was done, he walked over, breathing heavy, towel around his neck. "What?" he asked, noticing the look on my face. "Nothing," I said, smirking. "Just thinking how lucky I am." He smiled, then leaned in and kissed me right there in the middle of the gym, quick but full of meaning. "No," he said, "I'm the lucky one." It's funny how something that starts so casually, a glance, a nod, a shared hallway, can turn into the center of your world. A few months after that kiss in the gym, Nate officially moved in. No big announcement, no lease discussion. It just happened. His name on my mailbox, his sneakers by the door, his sketch pad always open on the coffee table, next to my camera gear. We still had our separate routines. He'd work late on design projects, I'd go off on photo gigs, but everything felt synced, like we weren't overlapping lives so much as living them together. One morning I found him in the kitchen, shirtless, half asleep, eating cereal straight from the box. "You're disgusting," I said. He grinned, mouth full. "And you love it." I rolled my eyes. Tragically. That was how it was, comfortable, effortless. We'd bicker over takeout, fall asleep tangled up on the couch, make each other laugh at the worst times. And sometimes, when the world outside felt too loud, we'd just lie in bed in the quiet and hold each other like it was the only thing that made sense. And then, one night, something small but big happened. We were brushing our teeth side by side, music playing softly in the background. I looked over, saw him watching me in the mirror. "What?" I asked. He wiped toothpaste from his lip. "I love you." I froze, not because I didn't feel the same, but because I did. So much, it scared me a little. But it wasn't a dramatic moment. There were no tears, no dramatic pause in the music. Just Nate, being real, honest, simple. I spit into the sink and smiled at him. "I love you too." He grinned, wide and goofy, and reached over to mess up my hair. "Knew it!" And just like that, it was out there. Solid. True. Ours. We didn't need to talk about what it all meant after that. We lived it, day by day, building something together in the space between ordinary and extraordinary. Sometimes, I still wake up and look at him sleeping beside me, hair a mess, mouth slightly open, and I can't believe he's real. That we're real. That what started with a dropped sock in the hallway turned into this. Love. Quiet, steady, completely unexpected love. And honestly, it's the best thing that's ever happened to me.